Hey everyone, welcome back. I know you guys love a good story, getting lost in a book, and today we're going to take a deep dive into one of the most crucial parts of storytelling, characters. You're absolutely right. I mean, just imagine trying to tell a story without characters. It's like a play without actors. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, no characters, no story. So let's start with the basics here. What exactly is a character? I mean, we've got a whole stack of articles and notes here, and they define characters in all kinds of ways. People, figures, objects, even animals.
Right. But what really makes a character unforgettable, what makes them stick with you long after you finish the book? I don't think it's just their name or, their role in the plot.
Yeah, it's how they made you feel, right? Like,
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I read A Christmas Carol and saw Ebenezer Scrooge transform.
Out upset.
That shift from like a grumpy miser to a generous soul, I mean, that really sticks with you.
That's a perfect example of a dynamic character. Someone who undergoes a real significant change. And it's that journey, that transformation, that makes him so much more than just a name on a page.
So we've got these dynamic characters always keeping us on our toes, but then there are those who pretty much stay the same throughout a story, right? The steadfast types.
Exactly. Those are called static characters.
Okay.
And they may not sound as exciting at first, but they're super important too. Think about Iago from Othello. He's the villain, right?
Sure.
Driven by jealousy, determined to destroy Othello. His character is static in a way. He's fixed in his villainy.
Even though he's static, though, his motives are still a bit of a mystery. It's intriguing.
Absolutely. And that's what makes him so compelling, right? Even a static character can add layers of mystery and intrigue to a story.
Okay, so we've got dynamic and static, but our notes also mention round and flat characters. What's the difference there?
Think of a round character as like a diamond, with many facets. They're complex. They have strengths, weaknesses, contradictions. They surprise us.
They feel real.
They feel real, exactly. Like Frodo, Gandalf, and Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they feel like people you could meet.
Exactly. You really get to know them, their flaws, their strengths, everything. Now, flat characters are a little different. They usually serve a very specific purpose in the narrative, but they don't have that same level of depth.
Okay.
They're more like supporting actors, I guess you could say, highlighting certain aspects of the story or the other characters.
I see. So it's like a spectrum of complexity. And then you have those characters that we see pop up in stories all the time. The wise old mentor, the damsel in distress. Are those what our sources are calling stock characters?
Yes. Stock characters are like those familiar tropes we see in books and movies. They can become cliches sometimes, but a skilled writer can use them effectively.
To move the plot along.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
to add a touch of humor or something.
It's really amazing, though, how all these different characters come together to create such a compelling story. It's like a perfectly cast play.
It is. And speaking of casting, how do authors actually bring these characters to life? And that's where the art of characterization comes in. And characterization, and that's where things get really interesting, is how authors take those character types we were talking about and they, really turn them into like living, breathing people.
Yeah. It's one thing to say, here's a hero. It's a totally different thing to make that hero someone we actually believe in and root for.
Right. A good author doesn't just tell us about a character. They actually show us who they are through their actions, their thoughts, their interactions with other characters. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
One of the articles we've got here actually mentions Chekhov's The Seagull as a master class in this kind of subtle characterization.
Oh, absolutely. Chekhov was amazing at revealing character through, the smallest details, a gesture, a look. You won't find big, long paragraphs describing someone's personality. You have to pay attention. It's immersive.
So it's like we're active participants, not just passive readers.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fun. We get to use our own powers of observation and, deduction to truly understand these characters.
Now, speaking of understanding, our notes also mention archetypes. These are those recurring character models we see all the time, right? Across cultures and throughout history.
Yeah, like the hero, the villain, the sage, the jester. They tap into something universal, deep within us. We recognize them instantly.
It's like we have this built-in understanding of, what a hero represents or what a villain is capable of, even if we've never met that specific character before.
Exactly. Like Luke Skywalker. He's a classic hero.
Oh, yeah.
He's got that classic journey. He faces challenges. He overcomes obstacles. And ultimately, he saves the day.
And then there's Gandalf, the wise old magician, guiding and mentoring the hero along the way.
Oh, of course.
Or what about Ross and Rachel from Friends?
Oh, the classic lover's archetype. With all the drama, will they, won't they? We all know a Ross and Rachel.
Hmm.
But it's fascinating to see how these archetypes, these patterns of human experience, play out in so many different stories in different contexts.
It's like they give us a framework for understanding characters and their motivations. But here's something I've always wondered. Do authors consciously set out to use these archetypes? Or do they just kind of emerge naturally as they write?
That's a great question. I think it's probably a bit of both. Some authors might carefully plan out their characters,
Mm.
you know, really think about their roles and consciously choose certain archetypes,
Right.
while others might let their characters evolve a little more organically,
Yeah.
let their personalities and motivations come out naturally as they write.
And sometimes the most interesting characters are the ones who just defy categorization altogether. They might start as one archetype and then evolve in totally unexpected ways.
Oh, I totally agree. They break free from the mold.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another important point, actually. Character flaws.
Yeah.
Those little imperfections, vulnerabilities, quirks that make characters feel so real. Because let's face it, perfect characters, they're boring.
Absolutely. Who wants to read about someone who always makes the right decision or never faces a challenge?
Exactly. It's those obstacles that they have to overcome, the mistakes they make, the lessons they learn that really shape them into those characters that we love.
And those flaws, those imperfections, they make them so relatable.
They do.
We see ourselves in their struggles, in their moments of doubt.
It's like that saying, nobody's perfect.
Right.
Characters shouldn't be either.
Yeah.
It's their flaws that make their triumphs so much more meaningful. It's all about the growth, the transformation. And that's what keeps us engaged, right?
Mm.
We want to see how they evolve, how they deal with adversity.
How they ultimately find their way.
And that brings us back to that delicate dance of characterization. How authors reveal these complexities is what really makes the difference between a good story and a truly great story.
Because it's not just about what a character does, it's about why they do it. Their motivations, their beliefs, their fears.
Exactly.
That's the driving force.
And a lot of times that's revealed through subtext, the things that aren't said, the pauses, the hesitations, the choices they make when things get tough.
Reading between the lines, right?
Yeah.
Picking up on those little cues that give us a deeper understanding.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to the details, the choices they make, the words they use.
It's almost like we're detectives, piecing together clues to unravel the mystery of a character.
I love that analogy. And the more we understand a character's inner workings, the more invested we become in their journey.
It's like those moments we have as readers when we suddenly understand why a character acted a certain way.
Those aha moments.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that make a story really memorable.
But there's another layer to characterization, right? How much should an author actually tell us outright? And how much should they leave for us to figure out on our own? Direct versus indirect characterization.
Ah, yes. The age-old question.
Yeah.
And there is no easy answer. Sometimes a little direct characterization can be helpful, especially early on in the story.
Like she was known for her quick wit and even quicker temper. Gives us a good starting point.
Exactly. But if an author relies too heavily on telling instead of showing, it starts to feel like we're being spoon-fed, right?
Yeah.
It loses that joy of discovery, that thrill of figuring things out for ourselves.
Which is why indirect characterization can be so powerful. It allows us to be those active participants in the story, drawing our own conclusions based on what we see and hear.
It's like we're partners with the author, co-creating the story in our own minds.
I like that. But this indirect approach, it requires a little more from the reader, doesn't it? We have to pay attention, those small details, the nuances, the relationships.
Absolutely. It takes an active reader, someone who's willing to, put in a little effort and really dig deep.
But when you unlock those layers of a character, when you truly understand their motivations, their complexities, it's like you've made a real connection with them.
And that's the magic of great storytelling, creating characters who feel so real.
Right.
So human that we can't help but care about them. We're right there with them, experiencing their joys, their sorrows, their ups and downs. It all comes down to character arcs.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different types of characters, how authors bring them to life, and even those archetypes that seem to pop up in stories everywhere. But what about the actual journey a character takes throughout the story? That's what our notes are calling a character arc, right?
Yeah, a character arc is basically the transformation a character goes through over the course of the story. It's like their path, their evolution from beginning to end. And those transformations can be really subtle or super dramatic, internal or external.
So are they going from zero to hero? Or maybe they start out on top and then take a tumble. Our sources mention a bunch of common character arcs, like that classic rags to riches
Mm.
story.
Oh, absolutely. Think about Cinderella or Harry Potter.
Hmm.
They both start from really humble beginnings,
Yeah.
even difficult beginnings, and then they rise to achieve incredible things. It's all about overcoming adversity, discovering their true potential, and finding their place in the world.
And then there's that fall from grace arc. It's like the opposite, right? Where someone starts at a high point and then experiences a downfall.
Like Macbeth. He starts out as this noble warrior. Everyone respects him, admires him. But then ambition gets the best of him. That thirst for power, it corrupts him and leads to his tragic downfall. It's a good reminder that even the most promising people can be led astray by their own desires.
It's like that classic Shakespearean theme, how ambition can be a driving force, but also a destructive one. But there's another arc our notes talk about that I think a lot of people can relate to, the coming of age story.
Oh, yeah, the coming of age arc. You see this one a lot in stories about young people. It's really all about growth and maturation. Like Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye. He's struggling with identity disillusionment, trying to make sense of the world.
It's like that awkward phase we all go through, trying to figure out who you are and where you fit in, especially as a teenager, like you're caught between childhood and adulthood.
Absolutely. But no matter what kind of arc it is, the important thing is that the character's transformation feels believable.
You.
Can't just be a sudden, unexplained shift.
Right, it has to feel earned, like something happened that caused that change, like a series of experiences or choices.
Imagine it's like planting a seed. That seed needs the right conditions to grow, right? Sunlight, water, nutrients. A character's arc needs to be nurtured by the events of the story, the relationships they form, the challenges they face.
It's like a tapestry.
Yes.
All these different threads woven together, the plot, the characters, the conflicts, the themes,
Yeah.
all coming together to create something beautiful and meaningful.
Exactly. When it's done well, it's magical. But here's something to think about. Not all character arcs have to be about some big dramatic transformation.
So it's not always about a complete 180, a total change of heart.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's much more subtle. It might be a gradual shift in perspective, a deeper understanding, or maybe a newfound acceptance of themselves or their situation.
So it's like those small, quiet moments of realization, those internal shifts that might not be obvious on the surface, but are still really impactful.
Exactly. And honestly, those subtle arcs can be just as powerful as the ones that involve a huge personality change. Sometimes even more so.
It's like those stories where a character starts out all closed off and cynical, but then they slowly start to open up to the world again, learning to trust and love. You don't always need a huge, dramatic climax to show real growth.
I completely agree. But here's a question for you. What do you think makes a character arc truly memorable?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think for me, it's those moments of recognition, when I see a little bit of myself in a character's struggles or triumphs.
I love that. It's that feeling of connection, right?
Uh,
Seeing our own experiences reflected back at us in a character's journey. That's
Yeah.
what makes it so powerful.
It's a good reminder that we're not alone in our struggles, that other people have walked similar paths and made it through.
Exactly. It's that shared humanity, the universality of experience. It's what makes stories so powerful. And that's really what we've been exploring today.
Not just the nuts and bolts of creating characters, but the heart of what makes them come alive and resonate with us on such a deep level.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, and I hope it's given you a new appreciation for the complexity and the beauty of characters and literature.
I know I've learned a lot, and I hope you have too. So next time you pick up a book, don't just pay attention to the plot. Take a look at all the characters who bring that story to life. Think about what makes them tick. Think about their journeys.
Happy reading.